You have to love your kids more than you hate the other parent.
Yes.
And you just have to, right? You just have to. You can want to flip them off and never, I'll say all of the things. You have to just love your kids a little bit more than that.
You're listening to the Nacho Kids Podcast, where we discuss all things step-family related. Real stories, real people, real help. Your hosts are the creators of the Nacho Kids Method and the Nacho Kids Academy Step Family Coaching Team, Lori and David Sims.
Welcome to episode 263 of the Nacho Kids Podcast. It's just me again today, folks. David is sickly. He has a summer cold, so I'm letting him rest. So this will be a brief introduction. Today, our guest is Rachel King. She is a family law attorney, and she grew up in a blend. Her blend started when she was very young, so she never knew life without her step-parents. Let's get to listening. Today, we have Rachel King. Hey, Rachel King, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing well. So, first of all, you are a family law attorney.
I am.
You are also a child of a blended family.
I am that as well, yes.
Well, first of all, where do you practice law?
I am licensed in California, Kentucky, Arizona, and Texas. My physical location is in Southern California, and much of my litigation experience is in California. But I do practice in all of those other states, and I have different services specifically for family law that I offer in each of those other states.
Okay, so Kentucky.
Yes.
How did Kentucky get in there? Because it doesn't fit Arizona, California, Texas.
No, it was actually each of the states ended up coming in for different reasons other than the fact that I'm from California. So I started in California. During COVID, one of my most excellent paralegals relocated from California to Kentucky. And so because we were already in a hybrid work environment, she continued to stay on to my firm for many years after. Actually, she just recently left for a physical job in Kentucky recently. But while she was there, we really noticed some of the lack of legal services that were there, specifically in the family law arena. Mm-hmm. And so that was why I chose Kentucky, and how I ended up there is only because my dear paralegal Megan moved there.
How long have you been a family law attorney?
So I have over 10 years experience in family law. I had my first family law case actually while I was in a clinic in law school. And then when I opened my firm, a divorce case was my first case that I ever took at my new firm. So I've been doing family law ever since I was a baby attorney, and even starting in law school. And I've had family law cases consistently ever since. It takes up about 50 to 60% at any given moment of my entire caseload.
Okay. Well, I definitely want to talk about the family court system. But
everybody does.
Yes.
Everybody's got an opinion.
Yes. Let's talk about you being a child of a blended family first. So how old were you when your parents split up and, I guess, repartnered?
I was very, very little. I was probably in I don't know if it was infanthood or if it was right around then. I don't remember life without or with my parents together at all. Interestingly, the family drama is that my dad, who I get along with beautifully, but he had an affair with his secretary, and that caused the divorce. Interestingly, the secretary has been my stepmom, again, since I was an itsy bitsy little tiny person. I don't remember life without her as my stepmother. And then my mother also got remarried when I was very young. My earliest memories include both of my step-parents, and they've been with my step-parents ever since. So I have a fairly unique situation in that I come from divorced parents, but then they got new partners right away, and then they've been in long-term relationships with those same people ever since.
With you being so young.
Right. I don't know life without my stepmom. I don't know life without my stepdad. I grew up, though, I lived in California, and I had a very typical, what I consider typical as an attorney, and then also seeing how it works, visitation schedule, my dad lived in Nevada. So I would go to my dad's house for as far back as I can remember for, every other Christmas, alternating holidays, most of summer, that long distance relationship was what I had with my dad while I was growing up. And then both sides ended up having stepsisters. So I have stepsisters from both of my step parents that also came in very young. So I don't remember life without my step siblings. And then both of my families had my mom and my dad both also had one more child with their new spouse. So I've got a lot going on. I don't know if I would consider it a nuclear family because I still had a lot of the family drama and divorce issues that appeared, but I guess it was, a pretty safe space and very consistent and routine.
So what was some of the drama that you experienced as a step kid?
Well, I don't, I get along with my step parents now. My stepdad raised me like his own, so I consider him like a dad. My stepmom and I had a really, really challenging life. And I oftentimes, a lot of therapy has gotten me to a place where I can forgive, but I think I was kind of a nuisance, right? It would have been easier if I did not exist through this relationship, but I did. One of the things as a kid that really irks me, and I still tell it to my clients, is I was forced to call my stepmom mom.
Oh no.
And it was really awkward and it wasn't my choice. So even when I would go for extended visits at, summer, I would want to talk to my mom because that's a long time. And it was just the most awkward situation. I'd be on the phone. I didn't know who to call mom. I'd get in trouble if I, didn't call my stepmom mom. And I think that had probably some longer effects than my dad and my stepmom intended for it to. It was really challenging emotionally for me because my goal I don't think that step parents are parents. And I get a lot of heat from this, especially in the
Amen,
law.
sister. Amen.
But they're not. And that doesn't mean that you can't have a step parent that is even better than a parent. Right? There's great ones, but it's still not a parent. And the child still, even if they either have really great parents and you shouldn't be wanting to fill the role of one of the really great parents, or they have a really crappy parent and you are the godsend to this child. But you still have to deal with the fact that in that situation, a child has a really crappy parent that they're going to have to deal with. So I'm just not a believer that step parents should ever try and replace or fill a parental role. I don't think that's their choice. I don't think that's their role. I think a child, if they want to call them mom or dad, that needs to be the child's decision. And I don't think, one of the things that I didn't feel like I was equal to my stepmom's biological children. Once I had my children, I realized I'm absolutely not equal to her biological children because it would be impossible for that to happen.
Yes.
And one of the things that I had a child pretty young, so I came to that conclusion pretty young, that I had to talk through with her and actually with my dad is, look, you're not a bad person because you don't feel like, I don't hold the equal place in your heart. I'm not your biological child. So don't try and force that kind of relationship on either one of us because it doesn't work. Right. And again, I had a wonderful relationship with my mom. So it was just it turned out to be very awkward. Other dramas that I had is my dad and my stepmom spoke very negatively about my mom and my stepdad. If I ever did, as a teenager, every rebellious activity that I got myself into was the result of their parenting. So there's a lot of blame. I think that was not good. And, I just didn't feel like I felt like I was difficult. So I don't think that they did it intentionally. I just think they didn't know how to go along with this and how to handle a stepchild and how to handle that relationship and how to navigate. You have a new significant other that's super important, but you also have a child from another relationship that has to take some time. Right. I think they did the best that they could, but I learned more about what not to do than what to do from them.
Yes. And not trying to defend your stepmom or your dad, but when David and I got married, that's all the material we read. treat them like your own, all this stuff. But that doesn't work for everybody. And in fact, it doesn't work for most people.
Especially when the children have two reasonable parents, right?
Right.
And it really doesn't. And it can cause conflict in the marriage. It can cause conflict between the child and the stepmom. It can cause, or the stepdad, whoever the step parent is. It can cause so much conflict. And it really doesn't need to be there if there's just an understanding of which each role is and how they can work together, and how stepchild is allowed to have a different kind of relationship with their step parent than they do with their biological parent. It doesn't all need to be the same. We have different kinds of relationships in every other area of our life. And so it's reasonable and it should be expected that in blended families, the same thing exists.
Exactly. Right. And I know when I was in the middle of the worst part of our blend, I didn't see what the kids were going through. All I knew was what I was going through. And once I started nachoing, it kind of hit me like, wait a minute, they're going through their own stuff. They're going from one house to the other, back and forth. There's not consistency in rules or responsibilities. So this has to be hard on them. And I think as a step parent, sometimes we have to step away from how we're feeling about us in the situation to remind ourselves that these kids and even our partner is struggling with this stuff too.
Yeah, there's no right answer or wrong answer. You know, I think one of the worst things that happened in our family is that there was no communication about it. We were never allowed to discuss why I had a challenge, why it was difficult for me to have a relationship with my stepmom. The fact that I have a lovely mom and that I lived with her. And so we weren't allowed to talk about any of it. My stepmom was, I think, expected to take on this extra child as her own and to treat her equally, but she couldn't because you can't. My dad was expecting that this would be like we would all step into place and have this perfect family. And I think he was uncomfortable with the fact that it didn't work out that way. And then you add in that really both sets of my parents had very different standards of what was appropriate and not appropriate for parenting. My mom and my stepdad were very supportive, but also understood, independence and that kids are kids. And my dad and stepmom were very much more authoritarian. This is the rules. This is what you do. And nobody really took the time to communicate, especially with me, about how to work through this. And I think ultimately there was just a lot of healing that didn't happen. They'd been married for, I don't know, forever. I was an adult. This happened like 8 years ago or something. And we'd gone through periods of time since I was an adult where we didn't talk for extended periods of time, because at one point I just put my foot down and I said, I don't need to have a relationship with my stepmom in order to have a relationship with my dad. That didn't go over well. So there was a lot of trials even through adulthood. But about 8 years ago, I didn't call them for their anniversary, my dad and my stepmom. And they were in Mexico. So why would I call them while they're on an anniversary trip in Mexico? And also, I don't really care about people's anniversaries. Maybe I'm a horrible person for that. But to me, it's
I'm
a
right there with you. Yeah.
Like, that's between you and your significant other, not my business. But I didn't. I don't think I ever had. And they got back from Mexico and my dad didn't call me for like 3 weeks. And finally, which was odd. And finally, he answered the phone when I called. I'd tried a few times and he was really upset. And I said, what are you so upset about? I mean, I'm a grown up. I'm married. I've got 3 children. I'm like full grown. And during this conversation, and he said, you didn't call us to say happy anniversary. And I said, Dad, you were in Mexico. Like, why would I interrupt you? And it's your anniversary. And he said, you're still upset about the divorce. That's why you can't even be happy for us. And I said, that was when I really looked back and I said, so you are the reason that none of this went right? You haven't processed the divorce. I don't even know anything other than these 2 step parents or life any other way. And me not calling you on your anniversary of 25 or 30 years, whatever it is not a reflection of my feelings on I don't know any different. This is a you issue, not a me issue. And I think that was the first time that I'd been pretty upfront with him and said, look, we need to like address some of these things that go way back, because you're mad at me over something that is totally ridiculous, right? And it was from that point that we were able to build and kind of heal, but it required us to go back and talk about all of the things from childhood.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you talked to him about that, though, because it's still healing, like you said. Mm-hmm. Now, I agree with you. I don't call people and tell them happy anniversary. That's crazy to me. That's crazy to me. But how old were you, or do you remember when you heard, we'll say, the rumor of why your parents split up?
So I didn't hear about it. I was sat down. Again, I say these things in case they listen to this. Hopefully they don't, but I do love them. I love them very much now.
We know you love them.
My dad and my stepmom sat me and my stepsister down when we were 12 years old. I remember because we were in the hot tub. We've talked about it quite a bit since, and decided to tell us why our other parents were so awful. So like my mom was so awful because of this. Her dad was so awful because of this. And then they started blaming the breakup on the other parents.
Right.
And at that point, we'd had some, again, we were 12, so we were not stupid, right? But she was very close with her dad. And again, I was very close with my mom and stepdad. And something about that conversation, not only was it horrifically inappropriate.
Correct.
It caused us at 12 years old to be like, this isn't jiving with everything that we'd learned up to that point. So actually that conversation caused us so much stress. We were so distressed over it that we went and started doing some research of our own and looked at marriage licenses and dates that they started dating and all of the pictures of, there's a picture there of when they went to Cabo San Lucas. They say this all the time. Let's do the math and add it up. And we were able to put the pieces all together. And I think she went and asked her dad. And I think at one point I might have asked my mom just straight up. And that was really awkward. But that's when we were told something completely opposite than what actually happened, which caused us to me and my stepsister to go through and figure out what actually had happened. And so I think we were probably in our 12th year when it all came to light.
Well, I'm really impressed with your investigation skills.
It was a pretty, the thing that was so odd about it is that it was random and there was nothing going on. And again, she really loved her dad and I really loved my mom. So it felt kind of like an attack. And I can tell you, if you are a parent or a step parent and you start attacking the other parent that your child loves, it's going to be disastrous. It's a disastrous outcome. And it was disastrous for them when it happened. And I tell all of my clients, don't you dare attack that other parent because your kid loves them no matter what. And when you attack the other parent, the only thing you're doing is screwing your relationship up with your kid. You're not breaking up that relationship.
Right. And even if the kid, this is very important for step parents, even if your step kid comes to you and they are complaining about the other bio parent, your partner's ex, do not jump on that bandwagon, because it's one of those things like, I can call my mom the B word, but you can't.
Yes.
And also, they don't want to hear anything negative about their parent. Just like a step parent doesn't want, or a bio parent doesn't want to hear anything negative about their kid.
Right. And that's in the best of situations. And then you add the step parent, step child dynamic, and it's a sensitive balance. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you. I love that. Don't jump on that bandwagon. You have to just nod and support. And I think that's where people misunderstand. You can support without agreeing, right?
Yes.
I'm so sorry that you feel that way. Mm-hmm. Like you can absolutely do these things without being like, I know that's awful.
Yeah. I think she's a witch too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And two, you had mentioned about when there's both parents active, even if a parent is deceased, they still have a parent. And a lot of times as a step parent, you are a reminder of the fact their parent isn't there. Or if you're an awesome step parent and their parent is just say in jail, then you're a constant reminder of the parent that they don't have or get to experience.
Exactly. And that's why I think understanding that you might be mom, you might be filling that maternal role that is so necessary. And my goodness, your stepchild is so lucky that they have somebody who's been willing to come in and do all of those feels. But you can't forget that they've got a massive hole because their biological parent, the person that was supposed to be mom, is passed away or is in jail, which can lead to a whole lot of inadequacy feelings among children. But you can't discount this hole that's left. And I think trying to can be really detrimental.
Why do you think that step parents get so offended when you tell them they are not a parent? I mean, because you've seen it. I know you've seen it. People get attacked. They're like, I am a parent, by God. It says it in my step parent name. Or this is my house too. You know, just, I'm the adult here. I'm their parent. I take care of them.
I think, you know, what the things that I hear is, well, it's my house, so I can do all of the supportive roles, but I get none of the power, right? And I'm expected to feed them and clothe them and love them, but I can't discipline them. But I'm expected to do all of this, but then there's boundaries as to what I can't do. And that's exactly correct.
Yes.
There is nothing incorrect about what they're saying, but that doesn't mean that you become the parent.
Right.
And I don't know if it's because there's jealousy on the step parent that's feeling that way, or they're uncomfortable with some of the past or the history. Maybe there's some healing that needs to happen so that they can become more comfortable in their relationship. I think it also stems a lot from the spouse trying to, create this nuclear family and not understanding that you don't have that totally anymore, right? You left that, and that's okay. And it doesn't mean that your child is going to be screwed up or that the other option would have been better, but you don't have that. So stop, if there's any insecurities, I really think it comes from insecurities, because some of the best step parents that have, filled in the role because a parent was deceased or, just a drug addict, or have co-parented successfully and beautifully with the other parent, there's a lot of confidence that they exude. They are comfortable in their current relationship. They're comfortable in the fact that their stepchild has two parents. They're really comfortable in what their role is, and they don't seem to feel lessened or attacked when somebody says, yeah, but you're not the parent.
Exactly. I completely agree. And I think a lot of it is, say, going back to the caveman days or the old days, where mainly step parents came in the picture when somebody did die. So it was them trying to create this nuclear family. And then you've got the word parent in there. I think that doesn't help. And then you've got these societal pressures that you're supposed to love them like your own, treat them like your own, and all that. But in reality, your partner may even say, I want you to love them like your own. But like you said, that doesn't mean disciplining them.
Right. And it doesn't, and you treat them kindly. You never want your stepchild to feel left out, but
yes, never.
But I think it's a bit insulting. And I just think it's anybody that has had a biological child, I think hands down will say that is a completely different kind of feeling or love or relationship than anything else.
Yes.
And so to try and make them equal, I think does a disservice. It really sets both the child and the step parent up for failure, because the step parent's thinking, I don't understand what's wrong with me. I don't understand.
I don't love this
feel
kid
this way, or I'm doing everything that I can. I'm getting pushback from this stepchild. Like, how dare they? I'm giving everything that I have. And it's like, wait a second, you don't have to be that. You're not that.
Right.
So be what you are.
Yes. I think a lot of it is finding the role that works best for you and everybody else in the blend too, and being comfortable in that role and not worrying about what other people think. I know when we first started Nacho Kids, we still do get a lot of hate mail, but some of the stuff that people say is crazy. Like, oh, Nacho Kids is neglecting the stepkids. And it's none of that. It is none of that. It is forming a relationship with this child that is not a parental relationship. That's all it is.
Right. And I agree 100%.
And you have the opportunity, in my mind, and you mentioned this earlier too, you could even have a closer relationship to your stepkid than they do with their bio parent because there's not that judgment there. I am the mentor, the confidant, the cheerleader for my stepkids, but I am the support for my husband to be the parent.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, when people say, no, but I'm the support I do it all for my husband or my wife. Well, that's a relationship issue. That's not a step-parent, step-child issue. If you are feeling like you are doing everything to parent your stepchildren and now you are being treated as less than or some dynamic, that's an issue in the marital relationship that needs to be addressed as to why you are expected to parent this child. And
Right.
That's really an unpopular opinion.
Yes. Very unpopular opinion. And I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm.
As a woman, I see this, but I don't know if it's because my view is clouded because I am a woman. But does it seem, from your experience with divorced families and stuff, that men expect the women that they marry to become a parent to their kids, but that women don't have that same expectation of men?
I think the men that I've dealt with in these kind of situations are really attracted to the maternal instincts of a woman,
Mhm.
right? And the ability for a woman to care and to mother and to be the support. And so a man wants, again, in my experience, the husband wants the wife to do all of that to all of his kids, like be that for all of my kids because it's so attractive and it's so kind and you are capable. I don't know that women are completely capable of doing that. But that might be clouded by my female view as well. I think that women do still have that expectation. I actually think, though, that this is really bad for blended families. There's another very unpopular opinion. I'll just put that warning out there.
Oh, go ahead. I like that.
New significant others cause more conflict in a co-parenting relationship than ever before. And I don't think it differs from side to side. When a man starts to remarry or get serious, that can oftentimes implode a very successful co-parenting relationship because the woman wants to be involved and wants to be more of a step parent than maybe she should, or wants the husband to care more than he actually does.
Mhm.
And so that can implode it. And then as well, when the woman starts dating seriously or when mom starts dating seriously, it can be, dad can get very, very jealous and think that there's somebody else that's coming in to step into their role.
Mm-hmm.
Neither one of those is accurate, but that is the common issue that I see hands down. I would say 95% of the time is that the dynamic of bringing a new significant other in will implode a very successful otherwise successful co-parenting relationship. And I don't know why that is. It could be because we don't have the tools, because there's these expectations of what a step parent should be, because everybody wants to feel like they have a place or are accepted. I don't know, but it happens all the time.
Yes, it does. In fact, a lot of times we'll talk to families when we're coaching them and they'll say, oh, well, something changed with the stepkid. Something changed. Or something changed with the co-parent. And we don't know what it is. Well, you start digging and they got a new relationship. And I've also noticed that kids, for some reason, when mom gets remarried, it's not that big of a deal. But when dad gets remarried, it affects the kids differently, almost like that solidifies that their parents will never get back together.
Yeah, I agree. And then we have all sorts of other issues with parentification and all of that. But and again, I love that you guys are helping walk people through this. One of the scenarios that I think is devastating, and I don't know where the root problem falls, but if, let's say we have mom and dad, they've co-parented beautifully for 5 or 6 years. They don't get along, but they get along well enough for the kids. Dad has kids every other weekend and maybe an overnight during the weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So not a totally equal timeshare, but a pretty consistent timeshare. Gets along well with the kids, all of the things. Dad brings in a new significant other. And I say this with dad because it's most common with dads. Mm-hmm. Dad brings in a new significant other is like, oh, well, you should have all the time with your kids. You should have more. You should have more. You should have more.
Yes.
And I want to tell them sometimes, why this has been working fine. You need to understand that just because you have this new relationship and you're creating a new family doesn't mean you need to upset this current co-parenting, because it devastates the co-parenting. It throws the kids in the mix. Nobody's getting along anymore. And it was unnecessary because you allowed an outside person to come in and influence your co-parenting. And then what people will say is, but that outside influence gets to because they're the new significant other and they're important and it's their family. But I would say, no, that's not true.
No, that's not true. It's like the Gong Show. Pull them off the stage. And you're so right with that. You don't know how many people that we work with that they will say, I pushed my partner to get their kids more and I regret it. 99% of the people that we have worked with that have pushed their partners to get their kids more time has regretted it. The 1% is the abuse cases.
Right. And none of what we say, and I'm sure you say, has anything to do with those abuse cases, or we're not saying, oh, if the abuse is there, we should let all this go. No, of course, you have those neglect and those abuse cases, and those are the standalone exceptions to these very general rules. But,
right.
But I agree. And I see moms, the counter is that moms, when dad gets remarried, moms start to feel that they're being replaced.
Yeah.
And they get oversensitive to what dad is doing. Oh my gosh. And they start interrogating the kids and they start wanting to know what is happening and kind of investigating if these children are getting too close, what they consider too close to stepmom. And it's like, they're never, to those moms, I say, they're never going to be you. So you just focus on you and being the best mom that you can be, and trust that your kids, because you are mom, are never going to get as close to stepmom. Stepmom will never replace you, but it's okay to allow the kids to have as many people love them and be interested in them as possible. And if you can go into your blended family or the other parent creating a blended family that way and just be the best parent to your children, then you will end up at the end of this 18-year journey or whatever it is, very confident in the relationship that you have with your kids, and your kids will be right there with you through adulthood.
Yes. I know my ex used to always bash me with my son.
Horrible.
It is.
Yeah. When I was 17 when I graduated high school. Not special. It just happened to be when my birthday was. And my parents didn't get along, right? They didn't fight in court, which I guess I'm grateful for, but they did the background noise in my ear, right? Mm-hmm. My mom and stepdad were much better about it, but I would still hear it a little bit because I feel like they'd have to defend themselves. And I knew at that point that my mom could not stand being in a room with my dad and my stepmom because of the affair and all of the history, right? Mm-hmm. So when I was graduating high school, I remember talking to both sets of parents and saying, I'm graduating high school and, what's going to happen. And there being pushback from both sides really about like, who's going to be there? Are you going to invite them? And I remember at 18, this is when I first, I guess, got the ability to say something. I said, so if you have a problem being at my high school graduation because my other sets of parents are there, you should really be the one to not come. And
Amen.
They both ended up getting it together, right? Because but they were not happy with me for saying that. But I'm thinking, goodness gracious, this is like a you issue again, not my problem as the child. And so you just don't come. You don't come if you don't think that you can act like an adult in front of the parents of the other parents of your child.
Right. My son actually, he graduated high school last year, and this year he graduated with his associates. He did the dual enrollment with high school. And graduation is tough, especially when the kids only get so many tickets.
Yeah.
And I remember my son, he didn't have enough tickets to include me, stepdad, dad, girlfriend, and grandparents, and that he's close to. And he's not really close to his dad's girlfriend. So he didn't see what the big deal was not inviting her. Oh, girl.
It was a big deal.
But I remember when David's triplets graduated, we wouldn't have had enough tickets for me to go if it wasn't for them being triplets and them getting so many tickets. And I remember telling David, if they don't get enough tickets, I will bow out gracefully.
Right. And not make it it's not about you. And
it's
I think
not about me.
Like, it's not about you. I had a judge last week, I think, tell the courtroom, you have to love your kids more than you hate the other parent.
Yes.
And you just have to, right? You just have to. You can want to flip them off and never, I'll say all of the things. You have to just love your kids a little bit more than that.
Right.
And I think most people do. And that's where it comes back to like tools and understanding what you need and how to handle it. All of the emotions and all of the hate and anger and jealousy and feeling of, despair and loss, all of it is totally valid and fine, but it needs to be separate from the love that you have for your child and learning how to kind of overcome that so that you can be the best parent and you can show your child that you love them more than you hate their other parent. Because again, they love their other parent.
Right. Yes. And I know I say that all the time about my ex, that his hate and disgust for me outweighed his love for our son. Mm-hmm. And that's something else. Kids see this stuff. You don't need your step parent or your other bio parent bashing your other bio parent. Kids will see who they are.
100%, probably around 16, 17, 18 years old. And your kids are going to be adults for far longer than they're going to be children. So how you act, if you're going to spend, it seems like forever, right? It seems like, oh gosh, 18 years, and that's if you divorce or you separate very young, but I mean, very early, but 10 years, you're going to fight with this person for 10 years. It's only 10 years. And your child hopefully is going to live for a lot longer. So how you handle that 10 years is going to very likely dictate the kind of relationship that you have with your child for the rest of their life. And it can be as simple as, I tell my clients, why are you fighting over Christmas Day? I get it. You want Christmas Day. We all want Christmas Day. It seems so important. But we may only have, your child is 12. So at best, you're going to alternate. You have 6. If you got every Christmas, you'd only have 6 more Christmases that can be controlled. Mm-hmm. After that, if you alternate, you're fighting over 3 Christmases. So maybe pick how you're going to handle this co-parenting so that as soon as your children are out of the court's control, then you've established a relationship that they're going to want to come and spend Christmas with you. Right. That they're going to want to call you when they, meet somebody or get married, that you'll be invited to the wedding, all of those things. But it's really hard to get out of the here and now, and I'm fighting. And most cases, again, I get a lot of flack for saying this, most cases are not abusive.
Right.
Most cases are not neglectful. You just can't see past your dislike for the other parent, and you can't see past for the fact that everybody parents differently. I am married to my husband, and we are successfully co-parenting our children. That being said, we disagree on many parenting things, right? And we work through them, but we've chosen this, and we still have disagreements on how parenting should be. And so when you now split up, just because they're not parenting the way you want doesn't mean, or the way you would do it, doesn't mean they're neglectful or abusive. It just means they want to go to McDonald's every Saturday morning for breakfast. And you know what? That's fine. That's okay.
Right.
Unless there's some food allergy or something that's really problematic, it's okay.
Right. Talking about Christmas, I remember I learned so much through all of this crap. The separating with my ex, going through the family court system for 18 years, the stepmom journey. Christmas can be whenever you make it. So when we didn't have our kids together, it just didn't work that way. Then we would do sometimes Christmas Eve the week before. That way we could have a Christmas Eve celebration and a Christmas Day celebration. And we would just move it around the calendar wherever it worked best for everybody to be here.
And that works for every holiday. I've had clients that have had supervised visitation, and which is very, very difficult and challenging. And yet they were able to move Thanksgiving to a Tuesday, 2 weeks in the future, because that's when it worked for the supervisor and all of the family to have a Thanksgiving. I have seen nuclear families where they are traveling for Christmas, so they voluntarily put their Christmas 2 weeks before or after. There's no set say. That being said, the counter is I've had families where one person was Jewish, one person was Christian.
Oh, yeah.
The entire relationship, they celebrated, Hanukkah and Christmas. And now all of a sudden, the fact that they're getting divorced, the other parent wants I want Christmas. And it's like, but you celebrate Hanukkah. I don't understand. This has never been an issue, and it's only an issue now because you are splitting up. And again, in that particular case, I went to the calendar and I looked at it and I said, for the next 18 years, please find the day that Hanukkah falls. The first day I learned the first day through this is the most important day. The first day of Hanukkah falls on Christmas Day. And maybe that's the year that we should take issue with. Otherwise, you are Jewish and you celebrate Hanukkah, and you always have. And creating a battle because you don't like this person is ridiculous. The fact that you like seeing your child open Christmas presents, you decided to break up that relationship, or you get to celebrate Christmas at the same. I don't know what to do, but don't create fake issues just because you're not with them anymore.
Right. It's a control thing.
Totally.
Yeah, you're not going to tell me what to do. And
And that's where I tell clients, focus on being the best parent that you can be, and stop focusing on what kind of parent other parent is. Let other parent dig their own grave. Let other parent interrogate. Let other parent do all of those things. You don't need to, it's none of your business what other parent does with the kids. It's really none of your business who's around your kids. It's none of your business what they talk about. And I say all of this and say, obviously, if there's abuse and illegal activity, that is not what I'm talking about. Right.
Yeah. You have to add that disclaimer.
No, because I get it all the time. Well, there's abuse. Okay. Obviously not. But any outside of those, and I don't mean what you consider abuse. I mean what's actually abuse. It's not abusive to take a child into a sports bar and have dinner. You might think it's bad parenting. That's fine, but it's not abuse. It's not illegal to drink and drive. I had a judge tell that to somebody once, and the whole courtroom was appalled. It's illegal to drink and drive over the limit, but it's not illegal to drink and drive. So you focus on your parenting. You focus on being the best parent that you can be, and let everybody else involved work it out. Let your child will figure it out, and it's okay. And let the parents be the parents. I get so much heat for saying to step parents, I'm sorry, I don't care what, I say it a little bit nicer, but I don't care what you have to say. The court doesn't care what you have to say. You don't get to dictate this custody battle. The fact that it's inconvenient for you to do pick up or drop off at this time is irrelevant. None of it matters. So you step here, stay out. You don't get to say, oh, but it's my family and it affects my family. Okay, but this custody battle is between mom and dad and child. And the only thing the court is going to care about is if there's another sibling involved, making sure that those siblings have time together. Absent that, step parent, I want you out of the courtroom. I don't want you to weigh in and I don't want you to be involved because it clouds and it muddies the waters. And 100% of the time it pisses off the other parent, which now turns it into a high conflict situation, which it didn't need to be.
I am so glad you brought that up because we see it all the time in our Facebook group or even in our coaching. We'll see people say, should I go to court with my partner? No, your name's not anywhere on those documents. I understand wanting to be supportive of your partner, but you can do that without physically being there. Give them a lucky rabbit's foot. Something.
I'll text you. I mean, we're not living in the 1900s. If you can, I'm in court. I'm going to be there if I have a question. Can you be there? Can I call you?
Right.
You don't need to be sitting there.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. It does. It fires up the other person and it just creates a lot of unnecessary negative feelings.
Absolutely. And I have dealt with some amazing step parents through my practice where they've said, I only want to be as involved as I need to be. I really don't want to be involved in any of this. If I need to, be there for a pickup or a drop off, I will be, but I don't want to be involved in any of the court proceedings. Whatever court order we get, then we will take that and we will figure it out within our family. That is sort of the limits of where a step parent should be. You have chosen this life with somebody else that has a child. A court order or some kind of co-parenting agreement is going to come out of that. And now it's your job or your responsibility to take that and to see how it works within your family, but not to adjust that agreement so that it suits your family.
Right.
Or your agenda.
This has been a great conversation.
I'm so glad. It really is. It's fascinating because it really bleeds into so many different areas, and it can be with the right conversations, it can really be handled, and a beautiful transition. And blended families are amazing and they open up so many opportunities, but it can also, devastate and cause lifelong trauma.
Yes. And I know one of the best things that David and I both did with our exes, because we would get an email and, it just makes you sick to your stomach when you see their name pop up or you're thinking, oh, great, what is it now? And you read this email, you read all these accusations, you feel like you need to defend yourself. You spend 8 hours composing this email and reading it and making sure that it's quote, quote, court ready if it ends up there. You have just wasted a whole day. Don't reply to the crap.
That's what I say. You do not need to reply to everything. It's okay not to.
We started replying, got it, thanks. That's it. And it felt so much better because we were able to focus on us. And you were talking a minute ago about focusing on your kids and things like that. A lot of times, if a step parent will focus on their relationship with their partner and their own bio kids, if they have them, they won't see all this crap they think the step kids are doing. But they're so focused on these step kids, they want to prove to their partner, your kid's not perfect. See what little Johnny just did? And it's like we just wait as a step parent that's upset and angry and resentful. You're just waiting to get that kid in trouble.
Yeah, I also tell people, when it comes to reading messages, you read the emails, and there's certainly a balance, and you can hear inappropriate emails or text messages, but you read even the inappropriate ones with the passion and the history and all of the emotions. And even if you're reading it correctly, even if you know that when this person says, yeah, got it, that they're basically giving you the middle finger, right? And maybe that's perfectly accurate. it doesn't read that way. And I've had many, many clients who have come to me and said, oh my gosh, our Talking Parents, which is a court app, our Talking Parents record is just a mess. Like this other parent is awful and awful and awful. And I read it and I say, it very well could be awful because you know this person better than I do, and you know this person better than the judge will, but it doesn't read that way, right? For example, yours. It doesn't, if she came and said, oh, they never respond, they're awful, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't read that way. It just reads that you said this and that they acknowledged the conversation. It just reads differently. So sometimes when we're talking about high conflict, co-parenting, step parents or no step parents, everything is going through your filter, which includes all of the drama and all of the history. And it can be really challenging to get past that and to just see it for what it is.
Right. You have to take the emotions out of it. We're going to have you back.
I would love to.
I won't get into the other stuff with family court. I'll save those questions for later. But being an attorney and you seeing all this crap that people go through, what is the best piece of advice that you would give somebody that is getting ready to get in a blended family or even getting divorced for that matter? Because, if they're getting divorced, they're more than likely going to get remarried or end up in a blend.
There's 3 things that I tell people that walk into my office, whether you are starting out on the process or you are involved in the process. You need to have a therapist, even if you are not into therapy.
Yes.
Because the therapist is going to give you tools. You don't need to go to a therapist to work through everything necessarily. I mean, that's on you and the therapist, but you need to get the tools, again, so that you can learn how to love your child more than you hate your ex, right?
Yes.
Or how to separate the fact that you're not projecting your feelings of your ex onto your kids, right? So get a therapist. The second is talk to an attorney. You don't need to hire one, but you need to talk to an attorney to find out what your legal rights are. Ultimately, whether you go all the way to court like you did or you reach an agreement, is fine either way. You have to live with the court order or the agreement. No attorney does, no judges does. So, and we see your cases hopefully for a very short period of time in the scheme of things. But you want to know what your rights are because you don't want to voluntarily give up something that's important to you. At the same time, you don't want to fight for something that's never going to happen.
Right.
And then lastly, you need to have an emotional support system. And your emotional support system needs to be different than your therapist, and it needs to be different than your attorney. Your attorney is very expensive, more expensive than either. Your therapist is also expensive, but you don't want to call them every time you have a bad day. So you need to have an emotional support system that you can go and complain to every time you need to complain. And that's going to be often. And so what I tell people is, the reason that all 3 of these work together is because your therapist teaches you tools. Your attorney is going to tell you what your legal rights are so that all of those support system people that are back here supporting you, but also giving you legal advice, you can say, I'm not going to believe them. And then you have somebody to call, oh my gosh, he did this. Oh my gosh, can you believe what she said? All of the things, you have somebody else to go to. And for all of my families or individuals that say, I don't have any friends because I've been in this so long. I get that a lot. I don't have anybody else.
Right.
That's not an excuse to me. You need to go sign up for a local club. You need to go do something with a whole bunch of strangers that you get to know so that you create your emotional support system. That could be a grief process counseling group. That could be a hiking group. That could be a mom's group or a dad's. It doesn't matter. Hiking, I don't care what it is. Go find a group and hang out so that you can find some friends and find an emotional support system. You have to have those 3 things. If you don't, if you don't have one of those 3 things, it's going to end up affecting the ultimate outcome of your family law case 100% of the time.
Yes. And I love that advice. And I 100% agree with all of it. Get a therapist, talk to an attorney, and have your emotional support system. Yeah. All right, Attorney Rachel King. Well, we will have you back to talk about some more family court stuff. But thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I could talk about this for days, as could you, right?
Yes, I could. All right, thank you. We hope you enjoyed our interview with Rachel. We did. And we're excited to have her back to talk about the family court stuff that we didn't talk about. And y'all know how much I love the family court system. Until then, tune in next time. And remember, life is good when you nacho.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Nacho Kids Podcast. Find us online at nachokids.com. Until next time, remember, life is good when you nacho.